which that's really what I'm.
And does that anyway? It's sad.
I'm sorry for you because you haven't had the proper experience of what it was like before.
I went a few times in the last week before, you know, as a transformation, but not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the last meeting at Shirehall of the Northern Planning Committee. I am Councillor Paul Rinn, Chairman of the committee. Some housekeeping to do. We're not expecting a fire drill today. In the event of an alarm sounding, please leave the building and gather at the front of the building. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. But I also ask you to please ensure that mobile phones are switched off and ensure the volume on your laptop is muted. To ensure members of the committee and all points raised by the public speakers are properly heard, I must advise you that I will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public, not a public meeting. And if such behaviour takes place and persists, I will adjourn the meeting. Members should ensure that they are present throughout the meeting, as you cannot vote on any item if you've not heard all of the debates. The members and officers introduce themselves each time before they speak, so those listening know who is speaking. Just to make members aware, this week membership has changed since the last publication of agenda. Councillor Pam Mosley joins the committee with Councillor Karen Bagnall as substitute member. Welcome back, Pam. I shall now ask members of the committee and officers to introduce themselves. So Nat, could you kick off, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Nat Green, Quarry and Coton Hill.
Councillor Pam Mosley, I represent Morton.
Councillor Joyce Barron, St Oswald.
Councillor Jeff Under, Ellesmere, Earthman.
Councillor Gary Birchett, Bagley Virgin.
Councillor Alex Wagner, Paper.
Councillor Julian D. Court Hill.
Councillor Roger Evans, London Division.
Emma Green, Planning Manager.
Go on.
Yeah.
No. All right, go on.
Ollie Thomas, Principal Planning Officer.
Councillor Vincent, Slow Malik and Vice Chair.
James Felton, Solicitor, Shropshire Council.
Lee Marshall, Committee Officer.
Thank you. Have we got any public questions? No, to confirm the minutes for meeting, no committee held on 21st of January. It's attached. Do we have a proposer? Minutes.
So, Chair.
Thank you. Seconded. Jeff.
Mr.
Any questions?
Mr.
Andy?
Mr.
Sorry.
I have to abstain. I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Two abstentions. Thank you. Now, do we have any disclosure community interests? That.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, item 7, I am the division. So I'll make a short statement and then.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Okay. Right. So, land of Walkmill Road, Market Drayton, and Ollie, you are presenting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is for 3 detached dwellings with the full description on the screen. The application site is shown in red here. The application site lies to the south of Market Drayton Town Centre, forms part of the larger paddock, which is outlined in blue. And this application is a resubmission following a withdrawal of a form application in December last year. The proposal description has since been amended between the previous withdrawn application and this current application. Here is the proposed site layout plan. I know it's not the easiest to see on the screen, I'm afraid, but you can see the 3 detached properties all arranged fronting the highway. There's a new access point being installed along the highway edge here. As part of the proposals, they're also looking to remove the existing hedgerow along the highway edge, install a 2-metre pedestrian footpath, and then replant some new native hedgerow and tree boundary. All three properties are served with detached garaging. These first two plots from the south, they have an attached detached garage. So they've got one garage each, which is a joined up building. And then this third plot has its own detached garage. You can see the wider paddock within the blue line here, and especially up here, you can see the quite close contour lines. It is a really steeply sloping site, sloping up from the highway. So these are the proposed floor plans and elevations, all relatively modest 3-bedroom bungalows. They're all arranged slightly differently, but all providing similar floor area. This is the proposed garaging. Again, fairly simple design, ties into the dwellings that they associate with. This plan is a street scene image showing the top image shows the dwellings behind the hedgerow. So the purpose of this is to show the roof line and how the ridge heights of the bungalows are relatively low scale, considerably so compared to the 2-story dwellings, which are recently completed over to the west. And then the bottom street scene is within the site, so you won't see the hedgerow, you're just looking straight at the bungalows. I think the point to note here is you can see the topography of the land and how it rises above it, and you can also see the ridge line and how it goes from 2-story down to single and then back up to 2. But the bungalows stay within the townscape, as it were. Cross-section plan here. This image is to show, because of the steep rise up from the highway, the plots are going to have to be built into the bank in order to get a flat platform. Each bungalow is served by a level patio area essentially, and then it's either a tiered garden or a gently sloping garden upwards. So this map is to show the extent of the market drayton conservation area. The application site is outlined in red. It is on the southern extent of, but it nonetheless is within, so we have to consider it in terms of its impact on the setting and significance of that conservation area. So in support of the application is a heritage statement. It does identify the site as contributing to long-range views of the conservation area closer towards the town centre. However, where the site is, and based on the development proposed, with it being single-storey, we're comfortable that although there will be an impact in terms of long-range views, it is a very localised impact, such that the harm, albeit there is some, is definitely at the lesser end of less than substantial. Moving on to this image, shows the location of Pelwell Hall in proximity to the application site. So you can see that the distance between the two is approximately 685 metres. There are other listed buildings within proximity to this site. However, Pelwell Hall also has a registered park and gardens associated with it. The heritage statement does confirm that this application site and the housing immediately south would have formed part of the former estate and parkland to the hall. With the heritage statement also that's submitted in support of the application did a zone of theoretical visibility. So that's essentially looking at whether this application and proposed development would be visible from the hall. We're confident that there would be no intervisibility in that it wouldn't be seen. However, there will be visibility from within the setting of the listed building. So when you're in the formal and informal gardens and estate land, the ridge lines of the proposed development would probably be visible. Whilst that is the case, we nonetheless still consider that to be less than substantial harm and at the lower scale. So as we've established less than substantial harm, we then have to turn to what public benefits are there from the proposal that would outweigh the harm through the setting of the listed building. In terms of the public benefits, since this report was published, Cabinet have met and it was agreed our housing position to be at 4.73 years. The result of that means that the tilted balance of the MPPF is engaged. Therefore, our housing policies are considered out of date. So we now need to look at significantly boosting our housing supply as a result of that. The provision of 3 dwellings would contribute to our housing supply, and it is therefore attached significant weight. The proposal to introduce a 2-metre pedestrian footpath is also considered considerable weight, where at current it's not very passable. It is quite narrow. It is acknowledged that the hedge is somewhat overgrown, which does also restrict the width, but it is a nonetheless narrow width footpath. So a 2-metre footpath would improve pedestrian provisions in the immediate locality. Whilst biodiversity net gain is mandatory, only 10% is mandatory. This proposal is looking to deliver in the region of 54% biodiversity net gain. So again, we consider that a significant benefit to this proposal. There was one more, bear with me. Yes, the proposal is for 3 bungalows. Market Drayton, there is a need for bungalows in that area. The location of the site is in close proximity to services and facilities, such that bungalow accommodation is quite suited to this site. As a result of all those benefits, we're confident that there is sufficient public benefit to outweigh the less than substantial harm to the heritage assets. Moving on to some photographs here. These are taken from adjacent the site on the highway edge, looking up and down the road. You can see in this image here the quite narrow footpath, but also you can see here that there is a varying range of dwelling types in the immediate area. You do have 2-storey, and then there are also some smaller single-storey bungalow scale properties. So the provision of bungalows would fit in with the street scene. These images are from within the site. This measuring device, you can see, the very top of that is taken at where the ridge heights would be. So because of the current topography of the land, we're able to place the measuring tool was able to be placed on land so that the ridge heights could be read from that vantage point. The purpose of this being that you can see that the roofscape in the distance here is not too dissimilar from where our ridge heights will be on this development. This image, albeit not very legible, is taken quite a way up. You can see that device there indicating the ridge heights of the bungalows. You can see we're quite a good distance higher. The red dashed circle, you can just about make out Pellwall Hall in the distance. So when you're down at the location of this, the intervisibility is therefore given through the fact that there'll be existing tree cover and the existing development in the background. These properties are the recently completed dwellings just to the west of the site. The application before members today is made by the same developer, so it is anticipated that they'll be of a similar style and appearance, using same detailing and same material palette, so that the 2 sites can be read as almost a single development. All of the materials and detailing is secured through condition. Yeah, there we are. That concludes.
Thanks very much, Ollie. We have 2 speakers and 1 statement to be read. The first one is on behalf of the local residents. Richard Cordova, would like to come forward, please. Richard, you have 3 minutes. You've got a clock there. So it'll start when you start speaking, okay?
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on this important issue, and of course on behalf of the people who objected via the planning portal, plus the hundreds who signed the various petitions, and the public body who objected to the now 4 attempts to build on this conservation land, including this committee, which refused permission to build on this land in a previous application. This application requires careful consideration, particularly in light of its potential impact on the Market Drayton Conservation Area, an area designated for its unique historic and architectural value. The planning officer's recommendation for approval suggests that the proposed development will not affect the historic character or appearance of the conservation area, nor its setting or views from nearby heritage assets. Reality is that this development will indeed impact conservation areas in ways that should not be overlooked. Shropshire Council's own guidelines clearly state that areas are given conservation status when it's beneficial to preserve their character and appearance. Nowhere in the planning officer's report is there evidence to suggest that this development improves the character or appearance of this green pasture land. In fact, the owner of Pelwall Hall, a listed heritage site and part of the reason this area was originally granted conservation status, has clearly stated their opposition, confirming that the proposal remains visible from their property. Further, English Heritage, back in 2009, raised concerns about any development on this site, noting that it would impose an inappropriate presence on the area. As stated by Ruth Hitchin when commenting in August 2023 on the application of a single dwelling within the conservation area, and I quote, "Decision takers should give great weight to the preservation of the Market Drayton conservation area and its settlements. The Garden Trust, an independent body, has calculated that 60,000 tonnes of material will need to be removed. I've yet to see an argument of how this improves the conservation area. The discrepancy in the scale of excavation required, with the applicant reporting a figure far smaller than independent studies have shown, raises questions about the accuracy and transparency of the information presented to the planning officer. We are also faced with the potential loss of critical green space that acts as a buffer between Market Drayton and the Tern Valley. The Campaign for the Protection of Rural England has already highlighted the importance of this land in maintaining the ecological balance and green space for people and wildlife. Moreover, environmental studies on this land show that it contains species-rich fauna, with recent evidence of a Roman road coming to light, both of which are valuable and irreplaceable. Approving this application would set a dangerous precedent for all conservation areas in Shropshire. By permitting development in a legally protected area, we risk opening the door to further encroachment on conservation lands, undermining the very fabric of these protected areas. This land was purchased with conservation status. We should not allow developers to ride roughshod over our protected areas. For the sake of 3 bungalows, I urge you to consider the long-term consequences of the decision. Let us preserve the integrity of the conservation areas for the benefit of our heritage and wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well timed. Thank you. Right, we have a statement now. If James can read it out, please, from the local member.
Certainly, Chair. Following is a statement from Councillor Ian Nellins, local ward member, who states, "I object to this development in line with the objections from local residents, including Pelwall Estate and Market Drayton Town Council. The proposed development is within Market Drayton Conservation Area. There is very limited green space in the town, and what remains is deemed necessary for environmental reasons, such as biodiversity. Local concerns also relate to potential landslide issues. The area, around 300 metres to the north of the proposed development, has experienced landslides from the area of St Mary's Church and the Mount." It's the end of the statement, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Right, we have the agent Nigel Thorne. Would you like to come up, please? I'm not sure if you know how this works or not, but I'm sure you've got the hang of it. You give it a snap. You're on.
Yeah, silence. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Chair. Your officer report provides a very detailed appraisal of the scheme and covers the issues very comprehensively. So my speech will simply highlight a few key points about the project. Firstly, the site sits within the settlement boundary of Market Drayton and it is in a highly sustainable location, meaning that the principle of development is acceptable. The scheme includes 3 well-designed bungalows fronting onto Walk Mill Road, which mirrors the bungalows opposite. Your conservation officer has considered the impact of the scheme and feels that the project is acceptable from a heritage and a conservation area viewpoint. As you know, being inside a conservation area doesn't stop development, but it does mean that the development is deemed, if the development is deemed acceptable, it needs to be carefully planned and designed. The officer's conclusion on heritage matters is within paragraph 6.4.12 of the report. Also, we supplied a technical document called a zone of theoretical visibility based on very accurate LiDAR mapping. This shows that the bungalows which sit on the lower slopes of the hill are not visible from the central first floor window of Pelwall Hall, and therefore are not visible from its wider grounds and gardens. The hall is around, as mentioned, 685 metres to the southeast. The wider hillside is being used for biodiversity net gain, and that's the area shaded green on the plan, meaning that the significant area of open space above the site, which is visible from Pelwall Hall and is prominent in the conservation area, is being retained and protected as suggested by the Section 106 agreement. P&G requires a standard uplift of 10%. As mentioned, we far exceed that, 25% for habitat units and 54% for hedgerow units. This part of Walk Mill Road has only one footpath on the site side of Walk Mill Road, but this is only around 2 to 3 feet wide, and it doesn't allow pedestrians to pass one another. It's a real pinch point on Walk Mill Road. The scheme will provide a 2 metre wide footpath across the site frontage, which is another significant planning benefit, which will improve pedestrian safety. The creation of the wider footpath doesn't mean the removal of 92 metres of existing hedge line, but we're replacing this frontage hedge behind the new footpath, along with additional native species hedges, totaling 337 metres in length. So 92 metres out, 337 metres in. All of the technical consultees, including highways, drainage, ecology, trees, landscaping, conservation, archaeology, have no objection to the scheme, subject to appropriate planning conditions, meaning that there's no detailed technical reasons to refuse the application. Your planning officers are also happy that the scheme is acceptable from a planning point of view. And of course, the recent confirmation that there's not a 5-year supply of housing land adds further weight to the officer's recommendation within the positive tilted balance.
Can't get better than that, Mike. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oliver, you'd like to come back on any of the points made?
Um,
You don't have to.
no, I think most of them have been covered. I think just to reiterate what Nigel said, a conservation area isn't a beta on development. It just means we look at it a bit more carefully in terms of design, scale, and how it impacts on the wider setting of the conservation area.
Okay, thanks, Ollie. Right. Yeah, look, the floor, Julian.
Thank you. For me, the judgment call is on this phrase less than substantial. Everything else doesn't, is not, to me, not a huge concern. And because of that, I have to say I'm a little bit concerned that we didn't, as a committee, get to visit, because I find it quite difficult to judge that on the report, and I would have liked to have seen the site. So I just wanted to make that point first of all. A second, my question is, if the biodiversity net gain is involving that green area behind the site, as I understand it is, does that also effectively protect that remaining site from any future development? Would the nature of the Section 106 prevent future development in that area?
It would, yes. So biodiversity net gain is secured for a 30-year maintenance period. So it does, in effect, sterilise that part of land for 30 years.
Thank you. Right. Gary.
Thanks, Chairman. Councillor Gary Roger, Bagley Division. Under 4.1.3, Shropshire Council Housing mentioned the previous application and the fact that they are possible linked developments, and therefore they could go into the affordability criteria. But just because the same developer is building two separate developments, how can that be linked? Can you just comment on that, please?
Yeah, so I think they are right in what they say. If there is two parts of a site which are clearly a linked site, then if you come in independently, we still have to consider it cumulatively. It's kind of like you can't salami sites. You can't just pick the best bits and avoid certain bits. But the reason why we're not securing an affordable housing contribution on this site is that it's under the threshold for meeting the trigger to need one.
Okay. One, the resident mentioned 60,000 plus tonnes of soil being removed to make the site usable for the bungalows. But surely our reasoning should be, determination should be what happens when it's finished. When it's finished and the bungalows are in, do they fit into the landscape around them? And yes, a lot of soil has to be taken away and deposited somewhere else. But the end result of the ecology should be, in my opinion, what's it going to look like when it's finished, not what damage they're going to do while they're building it. Ollie?
No, I think you're right. I mean, in granting this permission, we're granting all associated work. So all of the construction phase is granted through this permission, whether that needs the excavation and removal of soil or waste from site, so be it. But, you know, there is a degree of control we need to have on that, but that's then secured through the condition and the construction management plan. That will detail how soil or waste is removed from site in terms of traffic impacts. If there is any contaminated waste, where is it going? In terms of land stability, I mean, they're not going to make, you know, they have to make it safe to get through building regulations. They're excavating in and building into the land to create a flat platform. If that requires reinforcing, then they have to reinforce it, but that would all come through building control.
Joyce?
Thank you. I noticed in 4110, Shropshire Council, Historic England, basically neither of those, according to this, are supporting this application. In fact, they're sitting back and seeing what happens, in my opinion. And 4111, the Gardens Trust and Shropshire Parks and Garden Trust certainly don't support it. They think it's damaging. I, like you, Julian, picked up on that phrase, less than substantial harm. Surely that is a matter of opinion. And that is the opinion of officers. I'll take that on board. Personally, I feel there is damage to the conservation area and the heritage assets. But, this is the big but, the NPPF being out of date, I've been here before, it's catastrophic, in my opinion, for any refusal of any application. So I'm in a very difficult position. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you. Yeah, like Joyce, I picked up on the two garden trusts and made some very significant comments on this. You know, they refer to the fact that, you know, conservation area isn't just buildings, you know, it's about the strengthening and the protection of parks and gardens in the area. It talks about it being the last remaining open pasture land in the town centre. Once that's gone, it's gone. You know, conservation area can get nibbled away. You know, you can see the nibbling away already on that site. 30 years, what happens in 30 years? You know, could the rest of it go? I think it looks like, well, I too would have actually visited this, but it looks like it's a very special area. I'm not terribly happy with grubbing out what looks like a, forgive me if I'm wrong, a very old hedge, possibly an ancient hedge. And it talks about narrowing the narrow footpath. If that hedge were cut back a bit, it certainly wouldn't be quite so narrow. You know, making this case for a 2 metre wide footpath is fine, but why hasn't anything been done to improve it in the meantime? So, like Joyce, I understand the position with the land supply at the moment, but this is only 3 properties. It wouldn't make a massive dent into those figures. It's only 3. So I am concerned about the loss of what looks like a very special piece of land, which is obviously, by the weight of the numbers of objections and petition, it's obviously very well loved, and people want it to be protected, people that live around it.
Yeah, thank you. I think we acknowledge in the report that there is harm, heritage harm, and I think, you know, where that situation arises, we are still allowed to approve permission, but where there's sufficient public benefit. So that's what the report has done to set out, is that there are multiple strands of public benefit which do outweigh the harm. So we acknowledge there's harm. There's no getting around that. It's going to affect the conservation area to the lower end of the less than substantial degree. But there is so much public benefit arising, well, not so much, but enough public benefit that allows us to say, well, that harm is outweighed in the wider planning balance.
Joyce?
A question, how old is the native hedgerow?
Very good question. I don't know. Nigel? No, so don't know, I'm afraid.
Can I just,
It's been there for years, hundreds of years.
I'm just rather concerned because hedgerows being ripped out everywhere and not even getting permission for it. So I would have liked to have known how old this hedgerow is to see whether we needed to protect it. Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned there is harm to heritage, although it's reduced. Is that sufficient harm? If one was to object to this, would that withstand an appeal, do you think, based just on heritage impacts? I'm trying to think of an acceptable reason to turn it down. I mean, I think we're all sitting there with the same opinion. We're torn.
Good question. You can speak me good.
Yeah, thank you. So when we're looking at heritage harm, there's essentially 3 levels: no harm, less than substantial, and substantial harm. That's it. That's all we're allowed to categorise harm by. And because there is such a varying scale of harm, those individual less than substantial and substantials have quite big scales. So although we've acknowledged less than substantial, that's purely because we can't say there is no harm. But what we're saying is that the harm is so limited that it's on the very low end scale of less than substantial, but it nonetheless has to be less than substantial because we're not left with any other term to coin it. And as I say, if you know, when we're looking at this harm, it is then what public benefit is there? And bearing in mind that we've got this lower end less than substantial, it doesn't take much to tip that over. So where we have got public benefit in environmental benefits, the BNG, the social benefits, it's a dwelling type that's needed in Market Drayton, and also the MPPF tilted balance. Our opinion is that balance is tipped quite a bit more into, we're into approval from our side because it outweighs that less than substantial harm.
I don't think you quite answered the question. I think the question was, if it was refused, how would the appeal go?
That's what I was trying to get at. That an inspector would look at that. They'd say it's a basket. You've got your disbenefits and your benefits. Your disbenefit is the less than substantial harm, but it's at the very low end of the scale. So it's a very small disbenefit in the big basket. But then on the benefit side, we've got 4 or 5 things which are quite strong benefits. So when you're weighing one small benefit against 4 or 5 strong benefits, the weighing scales tip towards approval. So an inspector would look at that because that's what the MPPF directs us to do. It says where harm is identified, you then look at public benefits. If public benefits outweigh the harm, grant permission.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Chairman. On the 1.3, you mentioned the installation of a new footpath. Well, it's not a new footpath under the regulations. It's a footway. It's further down, you discuss a footpath crossing along Love Lane. So they're putting a new footway along the carriageway, which is in the footpath because it carries different regulations. Can you just show us on the plan, please, where the Love Lane actual footpath is and how that's been protected?
Sorry, I don't quite follow.
Yeah, so the footpath that they described isn't a footpath, it's a footway.
So
because it's a metal
along
edge
the
to many
highway.
roads. Yeah. That's not a footpath.
That's
A footpath by law is a route across land open to the public.
Okay, like a public
Yeah.
right of way.
Yeah,
I think
So where's the public right of way footpath on the plan along Love Lane? I looked at Google Maps, I couldn't see Love Lane on Google Maps, so
no, Love Lane, it's not shown on these plans.
yeah.
On the eastern boundary. Do you want to?
Oh, it's there.
So on then,
Yeah.
just if you just point out, please, Nigel.
Is that it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry, yes, that's
yeah.
it. Yeah. Right, yeah. I got you.
That leads to the edge.
I see. Right.
So the new footway on the highway is just a 2-metre wide footway. Not
So
connected to the footpath.
The new footway being proposed as part of this development is along the highway edge.
Yeah.
It's not affecting the public right of way.
Okay.
And I think footpath and footway, to me, they are interchangeable.
No, yeah, but
Yeah.
technically they're not in the eyes of the law.
Right. Okay.
In that case, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose that we accept the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. I've got a couple more speakers shared, but thank you for that. We have that there. I've just got a point to make. It was mentioned about land subsidence. Nobody's made any comments about that, but apparently the churchyard graveyard has been closed down because of subsidence in the hill behind. Where's the churchyard in comparison to the application site?
Further north from this site.
Oh, way up there. And a lot steeper, I presume.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So, Joyce.
Yeah, one more question. As this is a balance between the harm to be caused by it and the 5 benefits that you've mentioned, can you remind me what the 5 benefits are, please?
So, sorry. Yeah, so we've got the tilted balance engaged, the booster housing supply, the BNG, footpath, footway provision, bungalow type and form. Yeah,
That's fine.
What's it? Oh,
Hang on, that got Vince to come first. Okay, Vince.
Well then, really some of the points that I was going to make have already been made, so I won't bore everybody with running over those again. On the hedge, ancient hedges were young hedges at one stage. I don't like seeing hedges come out, but I do like seeing new hedges go in. And providing those hedges are maintained and looked after, they themselves have the potential one day to become ancient hedges. I do see in the conditions that our tree officer or whatever is going to be working on the constitution of that. So I'm not disappointed about that. I do think there is a definite benefit, particularly for people with prams and electric scooters, to be able to use that footpath. I think everybody's right. It is a subjective opinion, but right down in the bottom corner there, I don't think it really, to me, it doesn't do a lot of harm. And actually, once they're built, I don't think most people will notice a lot of difference. That said, I could have argued it the other way as well. But given that we are in a position which those of us who've been around for long enough know under the NPPF, I don't think there would be any way that we could defend this. I think the government have been very clear on things within development boundaries in the near future will just get signed off and probably wouldn't even come in front of the committee like this. I'm going to support Gary and I'm going to second it. I am not. I do think there is a little bit of a harm to the conservation area, but not enough to warrant refusing this application. I know, as Councillor Mosley said, that it's only a few bungalows, but only a few here and only a few there soon start adding up to quite a lot. And I think it's important that we try and head off any situation like we were in a few years ago, where there were bits here, there, and everywhere, and multiple houses being chucked on them, and there was very little we could do about it. In the days when planning meetings were starting at 2 and finishing at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and there was nothing we could do. I'm going to support it. I wouldn't say reluctantly, but with a degree of sadness. But there we go.
Thank you, Vince. Nat?
Thank you, Chair. It's really just a point that was raised by one of the written responses. Would it be correct that the officer's report, when it still talks about 40 tonnes a lorry, is actually really, that's the full gross vehicle weight? And in fact, it's 25 tonnes a lorry, which is the payload. Now, it's not necessarily going to be a deal breaker for me, but nonetheless, I think the officer's report should actually reflect that there's probably going to be a lot more vehicle movements than they've got here, if that's the case.
Look,
well, I think on that point, I mean, there is a condition requiring construction management plan. At that point, we would be looking a bit more closely at the total amount of waste being removed and traffic impacts and what size vehicle will be removing it from site. I think, construction phase, it is only temporary. So whilst there may be some impacts in terms of additional vehicle movements, it is only for a temporary period.
I presume it'll make a difference in going through Market Drain or going out of Market Drain on that road.
Again, depending on the severity of how much, increase in vehicle movements there are, we can do routing plans and control on timing of deliveries. Yeah.
Right. Well, it'll be debate actually. We have a proposed, we have a seconded. Yeah, so if everybody's had their say, we can go for the vote. Do we have recorded votes, I think? Could we please, James?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just go through members in alphabetical order. If you can indicate for, against, or abstention, please. Councillor Joyce Barrow.
Abstain.
Councillor Gary Burchett, please.
For.
Councillor Jeff Elner.
For.
Councillor Julian Dean.
I hate to abstain, but because we haven't had a site visit, that's my reason for abstaining. I want to give a strong message that I think we should have a site visit in these situations. So I abstain.
Councillor Roger Evans.
For.
Councillor Pam Mosley.
Against.
Councillor Nat Green.
For.
Councillor Alex Wagner,
Against.
Councillor Hunt,
For.
and Councillor Wynne.
4.
I've just popped those up there. 1, 2, 3. Is this 4?
No, have you?
Oh, sorry, Jeff.
You didn't say. I didn't. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. I was going to say yeah.
No, no,
It says the Roman type.
Yeah,
you missed Jeff, James.
Founder?
we did.
Yeah.
Voted.
Yeah, I count 10.
Did you
Yeah,
say?
Yeah.
everybody
What
votes.
did you say?
Yeah, I've got
Oh, you
10.
did? Okay, sorry, sorry.
Invisible
I've
man.
got 6.
I
Two
do.
against, 2 abstentions. That's carried, Chair.
Thank you, James. Right, so that's come through. Okay, so we'll move to item 6, Netherlands League. Ollie?
Yes, so this item has been deferred from today's committee. Prior to the committee meeting, it was uncovered that the proposal description is seeking to amend the operative part of the previous permission to which we granted, so which you're not allowed to do under section 73. I know it's quite confusing. So the previous permission granted poultry units and it specified air scrubbers. So because they're now wanting to remove those air scrubbers via this section 73 application, there would be no air scrubbers on the development. So the two don't tally. So we're not able to process this section 73 today. We need to do a bit more work in terms of getting that ready for committee. So in all efforts, it should be back next month.
Red tape driving round. There you go. Very disappointing. So we move on to item 7, Riverside, Mal, High Hill, Oliver again.
That's me again. Thank you, Chair.
This is your boy.
Couple of updates before we get going. Members will have received the additional representations last night, and there was an update on this item. Unfortunately, condition 5 still showed the mention of demolition. So just to reiterate that condition 5 will have the phrase prior to demolition omitted. It's just prior to commencement of the construction works. And then secondly, we had a late representation submitted last night. The comments have been uploaded to the public file, but conscious you might not have viewed it in time. They were highlighting concerns about the current design and impact on placemaking, quality design and safety. And they were emphasising the need for a more integrated approach. That's in regards to connectivity, accessibility and movement in the round. Right, moving on to the presentation. So application for Riverside, Moor, Pride Hill Centre. It's the former Riverside shopping centres. This application is one of a series of applications that are being submitted. And this one is to provide a construction of a 2-new-way road and various other junction arrangements at key points. The site location plan, you can see the red line edge encircling what was the former Riverside shopping centre. Raven Meadows runs along the southern boundary, the multi-storey to the east, Smithfield and the 7 to the north, and then that's the Nexus apartment block and commercial units and Rouse Hill. This is the master plan phasing to show the sequence in which applications are coming forward. We've already dealt with this left-hand central core that was seeking the demolition of the building and the creation of a public park. That has commenced and is well underway. This is the red line encircling the site is this second application that we're considering today. It's for the highways works. And then thirdly, there is an application currently submitted in outline for the redevelopment works, and that one will look to control the quantum and use of what the future Riverside area will look like in terms of quantum and use. Sorry, there's no detail in terms of layout scale, but that's for another committee. So this application can essentially be broken down into 3 different stages. Firstly, you've got the central avenue. This is to create a new 2-lane carriageway dissecting the Riverside shopping centre site and the multi-storey. The intention is that this new 2-lane carriageway will take the majority of traffic flow looking to access the Pride Hill servicing area, the multi-storey car parking. The Central Avenue, it's essentially two-pronged as well. So there's an interim stage which this application will decide, and then there's ultimately an end stage which the Highways Authority will do under their statutory powers. So we do still need to have kind of an eye on in the future, but in terms of today, it is just that interim stage which shows a two-lane carriageway in a southbound direction. Ultimately, it will become two-way. And depending on what happens with the bus station just over here, there may be some intermediary bus stops along this Avenue Road also. To the left-hand side, it's an illustrative image of what the road will look like. All detail will be conditioned, and further information will come through that application, which is still being decided, because the red line boundary on the outline application that we have and not yet at committee also includes the highway works area. So a couple of photos here showing the rough routing of where it will go. This is off Ravens Meadow and currently serves the Premier Inn and the multi-storey car park. It's intended that this will just be extended through onto Smithfield, exiting about here. Second element is Rouse Hill. This is over to the west of the site. Rouse Hill is currently two-way carriageway, and because of the diverted traffic flows through.
One way.
Sorry, one way, but two lane.
Yeah.
Two lane, one way. Sorry. But because of the diverted traffic flows down through the avenue, it will relieve a lot of pressure off Rouse Hill, such that we can downgrade it to just a single lane carriageway. So the intention is that only vehicles needing to access Mardle or Claremont will need to go down Rouse Hill. Then a couple of photos here. This is from Smithfield. See, it's essentially been downgraded to single lane at the minute whilst the demolition works are ongoing anyway. And then this is it looking from, well, not quite from Mardle, but as if you were exiting Mardle down back towards Smithfield. Thirdly, Raven Meadows. So the proposals here are to stop up Raven Meadows approximately midway from the avenue to Rouse Hill. Where they're stopping it up, there'll be a designated cycle lane, and then there's a bit of a turning head installed here so that servicing units can still access Pride Hill service station and Pride Hill servicing area. And then this is the gap site, which is currently a car park. There is an access spur still provided in here, but the gap site is also part of future Riverside redevelopment. So there may be further works that come forward on that in terms of developing that site. A couple of photos to show Raven Meadows, though this is looking from Rouse Hill. You can just see the gap site in there. So the Raven Meadows this part of Raven Meadows will become a designated cycle lane, and then there'll be the turning head installed in there. And this is the section showing it from the proposed avenue junction. This is the gap site. At the back of the gap site, there is a scheduled ancient monument. It's located in there. It's part of the old medieval walls. There's also a couple of listed buildings that are part of Pride Hill. Heritage assets have been considered as part of the application, but because it's currently a highway and the proposed development is a highway, there's negligible impact. Whilst there may be some differences in how the sites are appreciated, i.e. they were travelled by car previously and now it might be more pedestrianised, there was no harm considered to the heritage assets nor the conservation area to which this site falls within. This is an illustrative master plan taken from the ongoing outline consent. So it's not a plan that's part of this application, but I thought it'd be quite useful just to show you the aspirations for what these highway works will do in terms of the wider redevelopment. You can, again, it's quite hard to see on here, but you can see a fairly narrow Rouse Hill, 2-lane avenue, enhanced public realm over here, which is helped by separating traffic from pedestrians. Yeah, and then, so in terms of objections received, I think we had some from civic society. Whilst they didn't object, they were neutral, and as were the town council neutral, but themselves and then an objector raised issue about the lack of cycling provision. And in response to that, there is a section in the officer's report, but I'm also aware that the movement and play strategy is forthcoming, and within there is a identified list of active travel improvements, all of which are either short, medium, long term. And those more medium, long term plans need unlocking through various, applications coming forward, funding. So whilst the applicants have tried to incorporate some cycle provision within this proposal, there is only so far they can go without proposing abortive works, because what needs to happen is a joined up effort in terms of active travel for the whole of the town centre. So this application is essentially laying the foundations in terms of infrastructure, and then the movement and play strategy will be the document that is able to then push things forward in this site and in the wider town centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. Right, before you go into being that, you'd like to make a statement of being local member.
Thank you, Chair.
I remember.
Well, thank you to the case officer for highlighting matters relating to cycle provision, because it has been a matter of concern for the town council. And I would, and while I take on board his points about the fact that there are other matters afoot that will obviously feed into this in due course. Nonetheless, I would still urge that the developer still looks closely to see if some sort of additional cycle facilities can be put in. Anything that encourages people to get on bikes is to be welcomed, and will also mean that when the whatever scheme comes out to Shrewsbury in the fullness of time, means that there will more likely to be more people cycling, and therefore making use of it. But otherwise, I mean, this is just one of many of a number of applications that are going to go in for this, and with the proviso that nearby residents, of which there are some, are not unduly affected. I welcome this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah. Thank you. Just as a point of clarification, I did mention it in the presentation, but whilst the highways application is being considered as part of this application, if you just look on the screen, this is the EIA application which we're currently dealing with at the minute, and you'll see that the red line boundary to which the application relates also includes the highway land. So this is just it kind of reaffirms my point that this application is not the last of it. There will be more works coming forward as the scheme gains momentum and as more detail comes out. We're just laying the foundations to enable us to move forward with the wider proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, on to the floor. Vince has indicated. So, well, okay. Yeah. Vince first. That I put it on, I think.
Right, really, it's just to get absolute clarity on the final statement that Ollie's just made. So, in effect, then, for the project to continue moving forward, it needs this as an enabling application. But going forward, it can be changed to allow more cycle routes in when we get the movement strategy through. Is that correct? So it's kind of an enabling application in a way, isn't it?
It is considered an enabling scheme.
Yeah.
Obviously, the alignment of the highways is going to be pretty fixed. There's not really a lot we can do with that in the future. But there certainly are opportunities to improve access, permeability, connectivity through subsequent applications.
Yeah.
As part of the EI application that's referenced on the screen now, there are design codes and parameter plans which are going to set controls for any future development, and a big driver of that is connectivity.
Right.
So it's not the connectivity and accessibility of the whole riverside area and connecting into the town centre is not an afterthought. It is at the forefront. It's just with the applications are somewhat piecemeal in terms of getting there, but they ultimately will get there. We'll be making sure that sufficient controls are in place.
All right. So it kind of is what it is.
Right, I've got several here. Gary, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You haven't mentioned at all the remaining red meadows from the car park. The current red meadows is one way going down past the car park, heading around to the bus station and back onto Smithfield Road. So if you put the new Central Avenue in, what happens to the remaining red meadows going around to the bus station? Will that become two-way?
As in here?
Yeah.
It's outside the application edge. So in terms of this proposal,
One way going out.
yeah, I mean, it's shown as 2-lane on.
It's two-lane, but one way.
Yeah. So again, this application is the interim stage. So the avenue is one way. The end result is to have a two-way flow. So the probability is that Raven Meadows will become two-way.
Can I just take advice off the solicitor? I'm part of the Conservative Association, and we got Conservative Club just off one of Red Meadows. So do I need to declare an interest because this will affect the club if it's not done properly?
I just maybe advise that it's recorded in the minutes that you brought that up.
Okay.
In the interest of transparency, but beyond that, I can't see there being an issue.
And another point I'm trying to make is currently, whenever there's a flood on Smithfield Road, Red Meadows becomes two-way temporarily to allow access. Rouse Hill gets cut off. So if we change this road so it's only one way at Rouse Hill, what happens to Mardle and access to Mardle when there's a flood? Has that been taken into consideration?
I don't know if that specific scenario has.
6 months a year.
Yeah, I mean, flooding again has been a key consideration at all of the various stages of this application because it is acknowledged it is in a flood risk area that does experience flood events routinely. As part of, I know it's outside of this application per se, but the podium level to the future redevelopment works is going to act as flood storage.
Yeah.
So it will, there will be an amount of flood storage prior to extending further southwards into the town centre. I mean, in terms of contraflow and changing flows of traffic, our highways authority have statutory powers to do that outside of the planning process. So in terms of an answer to your question, I'd probably say it would be a matter for the highways authority to determine in that event.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Jeff.
Thank you. You want to harp on about cycleways and pedestrian access, but it seems strange to me that we got a massive opportunity to do something right. That we can't dictate that it should be cycle or pedestrian over the whole of the site. There must be something there to give weight to cycling, because from what you've said, you can ride a bike till you get to the gap site, and then you're stuck. You've got to get off and push it, basically, because there's nowhere else to go. So, is there any way we can put something up in this that will give weight to help the whole site being linked up?
Yeah, I think the tricky thing is the movement and play strategy is it's the whole end point of active travel is to have an integrated network. So it's looking at it from a joined up town centre perspective.
Yeah, aren't they getting little chunks?
Yeah,
So it's not joined up.
No, but that's the whole point of the movement and play strategy, that it does deliver that joined up strategy. And it will rely on developments coming forward that are in line with that strategy. But this proposal, our highways officer hasn't raised any concerns over cycle provisions or accessibility.
No, but we are.
No, I appreciate that, but in terms of planning policy, it's not such a concern from us that it would result in a refusal, because it doesn't worsen highway safety conditions. And
No, I'm thinking if we do approve this, which I don't think there's any reason why not to, if we did approve this, can we include some weight to make sure that it's taken into consideration for the rest of the developments? Because it's pointless having to ride halfway and get off, and you can't join up. There must be something we can do.
We only can decide on what's in front of us today. So this is what we decide on today, but you can put that forward to the planners, but not at this point.
To make a recommendation, that's all. even just that.
Oh, you can send an email to somebody, I'm sure you can.
I will just add that the EIA application, it does have a design code where its objectives is around connectivity. That is a control document for the future detailed stages of the scheme, whereby connectivity and accessibility will have to be ingrained into the scheme. So any developer picking up the site will have to abide by this design code. And those types of measures and joined up thinking does pull through to that. But again, there is also the movement and place strategy, which will deliver the wider, more integrated network.
Thank you.
Alex.
So, look, I know that we're not looking at the whole Riverside or all of the movement strategy today, but the movement strategy, as I understand it, is now council policy. It's passed cabinet, it's passed full council. It's a material consideration we can talk about in this setting. I wasn't sure how I was going to vote on this, what I was going to say about this today. I mean, I think there's an obvious benefit of making Rouse Hill thinner and one way that works well at the moment. Residents, I think, prefer it. I don't even oppose using the avenue as a road, but actually what Councillor Irvin said, I think fairly perfectly encapsulates what sort of rankles with me, which is that we're putting something in place that isn't really in line with our policy about trying to encourage movement and cycling and prioritise that in the town centre. We're going to put it in place on our own accord, and then we're going to have to fix it later, which to me seems silly, given we're talking about large amounts of capital spending and developer spending in a really key bit of the town centre. So whilst we can't, amend an application like this right now, I'm aware of that, I would like to propose that it is deferred and that there is more action taken to actually properly look at the cycle link and to look at what we're putting in place there, given it is going to be a permanent piece of physical infrastructure that is going to impact council policy as it stands at the moment. So I propose deferring this.
Thank you, Alex. Julian.
I'm going to support that, and I think, just first of all, we've been told the highways officers haven't objected. That worries me that they haven't had something more positive to say, precisely because we are now supposed to have planning applications which are informed by the movement strategy. To say that the way that this is informed by the movement strategy is that we'll deal with that afterwards isn't being informed by the movement strategy. Also, just in terms of actually the way we're presenting ourselves as a council when putting forward these applications, there are something like 8 pages about different turning circles required for different types of Arctic trucks going around that corner. I've just had a look at them in the application. There isn't a single page which suggests which direction cyclists need to take. It's nuts. Well, why haven't we at least got a document which says, this is the active travel plan for this site. These are the suggested routes for cycling through the site. It wouldn't be complicated to produce, and I just think it should be part of what we do now, that we're producing that. Otherwise, because the objections that have come in have by and large been along the lines of, it doesn't look great from cyclists, but we can't actually tell. And they're right, you can't actually tell. And that's just not good enough. We ought to be having applications coming forward with a clear document which explains what the active travel options are and how they're being provided, to the best that they can within the constraints of the scheme, and possibly within the constraints of the scheme, given that there may be future changes. I get that bit, but I just don't think it's good enough to come forward with a scheme without giving it some clarity on those things. So I would also support a deferment in order to get better clarity and a little bit of attention to detail on the routes through for cyclists and walking, during this phase.
Thank you, Julian. Ollie.
Thank you. I would just add that I think, as Councillor Hunt said, this is a piece of enabling infrastructure. So, as I mentioned, the highways area is included in a current application that we have ongoing. So it's not as if you decide on this today. It's the last chance you have to decide what happens with the highway infrastructure or area. It's just this enabling infrastructure is needed, and it's needed at this moment in time in order to comply with the LUF funding to which the Shropshire Council have received the funding to do the scheme with. I think the design code and parameter plan set out further measures of control, which does look at that more specific detail.
Thank you.
Just to come back on this, the report goes into a reasonable amount of detail on the impact on car traffic flow. Actually, most of the time in the town centre, people aren't in their cars. You know, I mean, it is, you know, that busy weekend before Christmas, we have 56,000 people in the loop of the river. The car parking space around Shrewsbury is more like 5,000. You know, I'm standing by the proposal to defer, because I think that we shouldn't be having these applications solely looking at the impact on motor vehicles, especially given the whole purpose, or a large part of the justification to do with the riverside is about unlocking that sort of other modal potential. So so I didn't quite know how I was going to vote on this today, and I understand that it being enabling works, there is that chance to change it later, but I don't really see why I ought to have to change it later. This is it's a perfectly reasonable to expect this to sort of be brought in an acceptable format and not have to fiddle around with it at a later stage.
Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. I looked at this last night and I looked at it again this morning, and I just cannot understand why it's come here in part. I want to know what is happening there. We are a planning committee for Shropshire. Shrewsbury is a main shopping centre and an engine for it. What do we as a planning committee want for this high prestige place in Shrewsbury? And we're having enabling registration, enabling applications a bit at a time, a bit at a time. Have we not got a real look at that site and that whole area, what we want it to be in the future? Shropshire Council has, as the applicant, they've got a movement strategy and a policy in place, but as a planning committee, have we? We are being presented a little bit at a time, which we can amend if we're still councillors, if we're still here, there. Really, we should be doing it once, doing it the best we can, and we're not now. We're doing this, which may be changed in a month, 2 months, 2 years, whenever it is convenient to do it. Let's have the information now. Why cannot we build in the cycle lanes now, ready for it? Why do we have to come back or do anything like this? So I support the deferment. Let's have the information now to do it and what is envisaged for this area. Not have this as it is and then expect some enabling registration. How do we expect other developers, if they have large sites, to do it? If we set this as an example, we should be exemplars. We should be doing it perfectly and showing what we want. And this doesn't. That's why I'm supporting the deferment.
Clarification, please, now, if I may.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, point of clarification. We're actually voting on what's before us. That surely doesn't come into what we're voting on. We are voting for what's in front of us.
Good point. That contradicts statement. We're not going to have a standard argument down this, okay? I hear what you're saying, but this is not what's in front of us. As you know, we're only here to decide what is in front of us today. Your feeling is you want to look at the whole plan at once, which you've said allows you to do that, but we are looking at what's in front of us today.
What I'm saying, Chairman, I want some indication of it to it. I'm not expecting the full plans. But what I'm saying is deferment so that the extra information can be brought forward.
The riverside is obviously not a new idea. There's numerous adopted development plan documents. There's the Big Town Plan, there's the Strategic Regeneration Framework. They are the documents that set the vision. So within those documents is what riverside will look like. Due to the scale of the site, the funding process, this is how the applications are coming through. But they nonetheless all accord with previously adopted strategic regeneration frameworks, Big Town Plan, master plans. So in terms of getting that final picture, they've already been adopted.
Thank you. When we look at planning applications as a whole, we look at all the RAPTA policies and indications, all sorts of policies that we have. And we do have a policy on active travel. And I know you're saying this will be looking at what's here today, because really is evident that we aren't actually conforming with our own policies. And as a cyclist who cycles around the centre quite regularly, you know, we are the forgotten ones in many areas. And I just don't think it's good enough to carry on treating cyclists in such a way. We do need to have better provision. And we shouldn't be saying, yeah, we can do it now and we'll augment it later. It should be basic that we start off in the right place.
I'm not sure if it's the right place to make these decisions, to be honest. We can debate it and put it to the planning officer to do that, but it's not here today to make that decision on cyclists and the route they take with this application in front of us today.
With respect to it, we're looking at conforming with policy, aren't we? It doesn't.
We don't currently have an adopted planning policy on active travel. There is the movement and place strategy, which does, it's not necessarily a development.
Council policy, not.
Yeah, but you have to determine planning applications in accordance with planning policy.
Right, Vince.
No, James.
Oh, sorry, James, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. James Felton, Solicitor. Fully appreciate the concerns articulated by members, and like Ollie and the Chair, we do take them on board. But at the moment, the committee can only decide the application before it. Your concerns are entirely valid, but as Ollie has said, and Councillor Hunt also, this is effectively enabling development to put the road in, the line of the road. The red line application of the site does include the full highways boundary. Members' concerns are noted. They can be addressed subsequently when this or subsequent application does come back to committee. But for now, all you can decide on is what's before you. Appreciate the concerns, but there is a danger that members are perhaps looking too far into the future at this stage with this application. I don't intervene lightly, but I just thought I'd put that down for members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, James. Vince, do you want to say a word?
Well, I think James has covered most of what I was going to say. I know we're the one question that actually hasn't been asked is and this is in now because it has to meet certain grant funding trigger points. I'm not sure we could defer it and still get the grant funding, but I'd like an answer on that, please.
Good point.
I understand we would lose out on the funding if we were to defer.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Project,
Thank you for bringing that up. Very, very important. Now, hang on a second. Did you indicate, Alex?
I think Pam made the point I was going to make.
Okay, hang on. So, Roger.
I can quote a case a long time ago where council made the decision to put cobbles through the centre of Shrewsbury. And they were put in quickly to meet a grant application and cost a lot of money. It didn't work. It had to be dug up again and relaid as it is now. I learned then, do not let grant applications dictate planning policy, planning reasons. We are there to look at the plans. We're looking at Shrewsbury here. We should not let planning and grant like that dictate what we are going to do. Because it's such short time, it's not our fault. We should look at it and make a decision on the application that's before us, not be told that you've got to do it because you'll lose the grant. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, cheers. Hang on a second. We've got a list here and a read down. So, in fact, Julie, you are next.
Just first of all, in terms of Roger's point about phasing, I don't have a problem with that personally. I'm objecting to this specifically on the grounds of it not having an active travel clarity about it, not because I want to know what's going on in the big hole in the middle. I'm okay with that. I'm not going to accept the idea that suddenly we're being held to ransom over the grant funding. There's the LUF funding is for the whole scheme. It's all being phased. There's plenty of other phases ahead, so the fact that we're putting a slight delay in this one in order for there to be a little bit more attention to active travel seems to me to be perfectly acceptable. If officers come back and say no, the grants are going to be withdrawn if we don't make a decision by next Monday, then let's meet again on next Monday and we can make a decision, and hopefully by then officers can put together an active travel document which explains and perhaps improves on the active travel actions through the site. So I'm not going to be blackmailed, I'm afraid, on that issue. So I still support the idea that in terms of whether we're, technically, well, no, we're asking for a deferment. Technically, obviously, that's an objection. We're saying we're not going to accept this in its current form. So to answer the legal point.
Thank you. Jeff.
Just clarify, please, for me, because I think we all are concerned about the cycling aspect of this, and we want it to happen. And our task is going to be to ensure that it does happen. Are we able to, and I agree with what Joyce has said, what everybody else has said, we're here to consider the application before us, not the whole site. So I agree with that. So the next application, which is the next piece of the jigsaw that's going to go next to this, are we able to object to that if it doesn't have cycle? No, not now. I mean, then when the next one, I just want to advise. So when the next application comes in, we're no rights to say we're not doing that because they haven't got cycleway.
You can certainly raise you can certainly raise cycle provision as part of that, the current the EIA application we've got in, because that is part and parcel of the redevelopment. I would advise you to go look at that application. There is the detail on there is far more robust. Well, not robust, but it's far more detailed than this because it's covering a whole plethora of things. This is simply looking at the highway infrastructure.
And when are we going to? Can we have some movement on getting a full council agreement on cycle throughout the site, or on movement or whatever?
We're getting conflated. We're the local planning.
Yeah. Come on.
Application. We're not.
This is the
We're
planning
not pushing
committee.
forward.
Come on, please. Joyce.
Yeah, I think mentioning the grant funding is a red herring for pushing this forward personally, but I'm sitting here and I'm wondering about members' training on planning, because some of the things that are being brought up here are not relevant to this at all. I'm sitting here thinking, why are we talking about this?
Well, I'm getting warm.
Oh,
I've done this for 33 years. Same reason. We have something in front of us and we decide what's in front of
so
us.
we could.
We've had proposed and seconded for referral. Which, no, it's fine. We're nearly there. Vince can say something now. Vince.
Everybody just, I mean, I think we're making somewhat rather more of this than we need to. This is an application that's just marcating where the entrances and exits are going to be or being moved to. It's not about how they're going to eventually end up. I mean, I don't expect there's going to be many cyclists pedaling around there over cobblestones or whatever, Roger, but I don't think there are going to be many cyclists pedaling around there while the works are ongoing. This is just about where these entrances and exits are going to go. And then at some stage in the future, it will be determined what they should look like when the thing's finished.
That is simple to me. It's exits, etc. It's not the actual. The next stage is the one which is more concentrated, which you should be looking at before it comes to committee. Right. Okay. We have a proposal and second for a deferral. That's on the table at the moment. So we are now going to take a vote on that. Could we have it recorded, please, again?
Thank you, Chair. And again, working through members alphabetically. This is in terms of the deferral. Councillor Barrow.
Against.
Councillor Burchett.
Against.
Councillor Elner.
Against.
Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Mosley.
For.
Councillor Wagner.
For.
Councillor Hunt.
Against.
And yourself, Chair.
Against.
I've got 2,
5-4.
5-4.
So that's against that proposal's done.
Chair, I'd like to make a
Against. So Vince.
proposal, if I may.
Yeah.
I propose we
Second.
go the officer's recommendation.
Off the recommendation, you've got a seconder. Now we'll take that vote if that's okay, please, James.
Certainly, Chair. Go through.
Oh,
Just with the dated condition list.
With the updated condition is taken on board, yes.
Councillor Barrow.
For.
Councillor Burchett.
For.
Councillor Elner.
For.
Councillor Dean.
Abstain.
Councillor Evans.
Abstain.
Councillor Mosley.
Abstain.
Councillor Wagner.
Against.
Councillor Hunt.
For.
And yourself, Chair.
for.
Oh, 5-4, 3 abstentions, 1 against. That's carried, Chair.
Thank you. But it will be in the minutes. It will be taken down. I'm sure Ollie will take it further and mention it to the planners going forward. It's the next one, is the detailed one, if that's right. That's the one.
Yeah, it's the
next. But
Yeah.
keep your eye on it. Be on top of it. All right. It's up to you to do it. Not at this meeting today.
Yeah, agree.
Phew. Right. Item 8, Laurel Cottage Ash. Who's been, Ollie? Oh, sorry. Have a break. Have a break. Really difficult one here.
I'll let you know we have a little catch his breath. So this is an application for a 2-storey side extension to a detached property in Ashmadney. It's come before committee because the it's an officer application, so it's one of the planning officers in Scotland. So they can see detached sitting in a large plot with a nice large side garden. You can just click on that. Yep. That's the existing elevations of the building. It's already had a rear extension, and the proposal is for the 2-storey subservient side extension. There you go. Move on to the next. There are some photographs of the site. So you can see the side garden that it sits in, and if we move on to the next one, we can see the relationship with the adjacent bungalow. And there is quite a substantial, generous garden, and I've considered about the gaps between the existing development. So it's recommended for approval because it's of a scale and size which is subservient to the dwelling, matches the local vernacular of the area, and is positioned to protect and respect the neighbouring properties and amenities. So subject to conditions, it is recommended for approval.
Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you. Now, just being. Okay, Vince, you.
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and move that we go with this. It's obviously officers are happy with it. It's only here because it's a council officer application. I suspect that it would have gone through officer channels and it been allowed to. So I'm quite happy to move this.
Joyce seconded it. Any debate? Anybody wants to say anything? No. I think we have a show of hands on this. All those in favour, please show. There we go. That's them through. Thank you. Right, we get to appeals and appeals decisions. I didn't have a look at them personally, I'm afraid. Any comments from anybody?
Nothing of particular notes unless I don't have any specific questions.
Quickly, right. Item 10, date for the next meeting is 18th of March. I presume that will be at here. Our last meeting here. Thank you very much for attending. And we will be the last meeting, most probably, that being held at the Shirehall. Thank you very much.
So we get to keep the chairs, like.